Okay, in this video, we are going to cover customer discovery. So if you remember, we talked about, in a little bit of fun and a little bit of play, we talked about you building this superpower that only 1% of the population has. Well, that's what we're going to cover now. So we're going to start with our customer discovery section. Okay. So the way that we start customer discovery is we start with this concept called the business model canvas. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of a business model canvas. If you had, that's great. If not, that's fine. But it's basically 9 different building blocks that we have that we're going to be filling out. Okay? And in that, we're going to talk about things like customer segments. Who are your customers? What's your value proposition? What is the problem that you're solving for that customer? How are you going to get to that customers? How do you make money with revenue streams? What does the cost structure look like? Are there any key partnerships that you need to do? What are some of the activities that you have to happen inside of the company to make it successful? What are some key resources? So this is the business model canvas, and it's fine if you don't have the answers to them. In fact, we don't want you to have all the answers from us because we're going to go through them as we go through our program through successive weeks. We're going to start filling those out. Okay? So that's the business model canvas. Now, specifically for this program, and for the first 4 to 6 weeks, what we want you to concentrate on really with customer discovery is customer segments. Who is your customer? And what value do you bring to that customer? What problem are you solving? What opportunity are you giving them? What is the value that you're bringing to them? These are arguably the 2 most important pieces, but I do believe that they are the first ones we need to figure out. Because if you don't know who your customer is and you don't know what value you bring to them, why do we care what your costs are? Why do we care how you price it? We need to figure out who that customer is, and it could be multiple different customer bases, and then what value do you bring to them? And it could be different values to different customer segments. But that's what we're going to be documenting in here, and it'll get much more clear as you go forward, so don't worry about having all the answers right now. Okay? In fact, the way it works is I'm going to ask you all to take a guess at it. Go ahead and write down who you think your customers are. Go ahead and write down what you think you bring to those customers. Talk about the customer relationships. Talk about how you're going to get to them. Talk about how you're going to generate revenue. Talk about the cost. Take a guess, okay? They're not going to be right, and that's what we want. We want you to just think about it a little bit, put it on there, and do that. Because the reason we're going to do that is we're going to use a process called customer discovery, where we actually go out and talk to people, talk to potential customers, potential partners, potential suppliers, influencers, through customer interviews to get to the point where if we hear it enough times, we could start laying it out as fact. So if we say this is our customer segment, and as we talk to each of those people in those customer segments, do they validate that they have that problem? That our solution actually can solve a problem for them? And so if we hear that over and over again, we know that we turn that guess into a fact. So that's what we're going to do. That's the idea of customer discovery. Okay? So the way the whole customer discovery process works is we take a shot at our business model canvas. We get out of the building, go out there and talk to customers, vendors, partners, potential customers, competitors, validate those assumptions that we've made, like why we think they would like our product or service, right? What their problems are, what the different opportunities are, what gain do they get from our product or service, okay? Update our customer scorecard. This is just keeping a track of all the different people that we spoke with. And then based on the insights that we get, we update our business model canvas. It might validate that this is a great customer segment. Or it might make us break out our customer segment into 2 different ones because it turns out that the younger segment likes to have this as their value, whereas the older segment may have a different value proposition for them. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to continue to go through this process. And this is what we refer to as customer discovery. Extremely powerful. So I'll give you a couple examples. I was a mentor for a team that worked on an educational game. And the whole idea of the educational game was it turned out that in the high school and college ages and just after college ages, the gaming market was ginormous. It was a huge marketplace, but there weren't that many educational games in that market space. So we said, obviously, there must be a huge opportunity. If people like playing games, why don't we create educational games specifically for that market segment? It'd be a great opportunity. So in a program just like this, we ended up going out there and doing some customer interviews. And for those that know me, I'm a bit competitive. So we went out there and we wanted to interview more people than anybody. So we came back to class and we interviewed 40 people, right? And every one of them, this is the insight that we got from our interviews. Every one of them would rather have their kids play a educational game as opposed to a shooting up game or one of these other types of games, right? So we're going, oh, we're ready to get the praise that we thought we were going to get. And then the teaching team reached out and said, wait a minute, isn't that intuitively obvious? And we're going, isn't that what insight is? I mean, we're trying to validate these assumptions. And they say, no, you need to go actually figure out insight. And so we scratched our head and said, what is this insight that they're talking about? What are we supposed to be figuring out? And for each of you, as well as us, it's going to be different. So in us, it came about in week 3 or week 4. What we figured out finally was that insight that we're looking for. And what that was that the reason educational games are pretty big when they're younger is because the parent buys the game for them, right? So if a parent's buying it, a lot of educational games are bought. But who makes the buying decision at the high school ages, the college ages, and after the college ages? It's not the parent anymore that makes the buying decision. It's actually the kid, the child, right? Or the young adult that's making that decision, okay? So in that case, they're not looking for educational games. They're looking for entertainment. So then we had to pivot. Do we create a very entertaining game that's competitive that might also be educational, or do we focus on a different customer segment, right? Or a different value proposition? So what we ended up doing is pivoting on that. And the pivot was basically moving to something where gaming is still part of it, but it's something that someone will pay for. So in this case, it went into, if you're a medical school student, one of the things you have to do is organic chemistry, and organic chemistry has these 3D manipulations. And a lot of people are not that great at 3D manipulations. So what this game did was allow you to actually go in there and do 3D manipulations over and over again to the point where you got better at it, and then hopefully score better on the MCAT exams and get into medical school. So and they're willing to pay for it because this is something that they're trying to work towards, and these are different study guides and study games that we would buy. So that gives you an idea of an example of what we're looking for in terms of customer discovery, okay? So what I just described is a pivot. Sometimes when you go through your business, as I talked about in our first session, the best thing you can do in a startup or a new business is be successful. The second best thing is to actually fail fast. So that's the whole idea of customer discovery. Get out there, talk to people, then find out maybe that's not what you need to go after. Maybe you need to pivot. It could be a small pivot, like maybe we need to go after a different market, or we need to go after a different piece. Or it could be a larger one where we pivot completely away from what our original business idea was into another one. And so do not fear the pivot, okay? Pivots are good. If you run into a wall or if you run into some slowdowns, realize that a pivot is not bad at all. Okay, so let's go out there and do some customer interviews. What's that look like? The more the interviews, the better, because really what we're trying to do is get more data points. So can you see that if I talk to 50 people and I hear, let's say 30 of them say that this is our largest problem and we have a solution for that, can you see how your confidence goes up and you start seeing that, wow, you know what? We actually have a very big opportunity, okay? So try to get more interviews. The more interviews you get, the more data you collect, the more patterns that you're going to see, and the more powerful it's going to be. Warm contacts typically work better than cold calling. So what that means is ask other people to introduce you or mention who referred you when you're trying to make those. And we'll talk a little bit about that. One of the methods that I like to use is get their attention with some honesty and also flattery. I'm told you're an expert in this field. I'm just looking to get some advice from, a supreme expert in this field. Try those, and I'll show you how that works here in a second. Face-to-face meetings are typically better. If you can't get them in face-to-face, maybe video, so that you can actually read their body language, see how they feel, see the environment that your customer's in, see how they make those decisions. And through customer discovery, the whole idea is not to be selling. You're not actually selling your product, you're actually learning. You're trying to get information from the customers, okay? And then one of the techniques I use is mentioning the program. So here's how that would sort of work, okay? So as I try to go up there and set up the interview, let's say I'm emailing or I'm leaving a voicemail, I would typically say something like this. Hi, my name is Bill Adamowski. I'm with the Drake Accelerator or whatever the name of your program is. So the Drake Accelerator program, and I'm doing some research regarding whatever the field that you're looking at. So let's say I'm looking at a field of, let's say automobiles, right, man? So automobiles and trying to figure out something in that industry. I was given your name by somebody, okay? So I could say I was given your name by Paula, and she said that you were the smartest person around automobiles. And automobile, you know, let's say it's about automobile, what do they call it? Service, okay? You're the smartest person around automobile servicing. I'm trying to get a better understanding of the entire industry, the issues, the opportunities, and I would really appreciate you meeting with me for 30 minutes, 15 minutes to ask you some questions. I'd be more than happy to meet you at your office to make it easier for you. Thank you for consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay. So some elements. You don't have to do it exactly like that. You know, put it into your own style, put it into your own words, type it out in a different way in terms of email. But a couple things. One is the reason I start off and tell them that I'm part of a different program is the first thing I want them to know is I'm not a salesperson. I don't know about you, but I am not that fond of talking to cold call salespeople that call me up and try to sell me something without knowing who I am. So right away, basically tell them I am not a salesperson, okay? Second, you didn't get their name just by chance. You didn't pull it out of some, random list. You got their name from someone, or you saw them at a conference. You saw a YouTube video. You saw a posting of theirs. You saw they were speaking at somewhere. Somehow warm it up a little bit, and then throw the little flatter in there. I was told that you are the most knowledgeable person in this industry. Okay, hard to resist when someone's reaching out to you and saying, "I'd like to I'd like to get some advice from you," when you are the most knowledgeable person in that industry. Okay, and then the ask, basically ask them for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes that you can ask them some questions. Don't ask them for a lot of time, but typically your interviews are going to go much longer than that. But basically ask them for a small amount of time. That way they don't feel like it's going to be a big burden. And then I always ask to say, I would be more than happy to meet you at your office. That's a subtle way to say, I would like to meet you in person, face to face, and I'd like to see them in their environment. So I will offer that. It looks like I'm actually being polite, but I really would like to meet them at their office as opposed to a random coffee shop or something like that. And then I thank them, and hopefully that they would return my call or return my email, and we can set up the meeting. Okay? So when you're at the interview, so let's say that you set up the interview, what happens when we're at the interview? Okay? The first thing, general rule, you talk 30% of the time and they talk 70% of the time. So the reason for that is you're not learning anything when you're talking. This is also true when you're in sales. Okay? So if you're in sales mode, remember this, right? People like talking. When they start talking about themselves, they'll even talk more. So your general rule is that you only talk 30% of the time, they talk 70% of the time. Once again, why? Because you don't learn anything when you are talking. You only learn when they are talking. So get good or start thinking about questions to ask them to keep that conversation going. Drill down when they start talking about different things. And what you'll find is you're not really inconveniencing them. People love talking about themselves and what they do, especially when they're passionate about it. So you'll find this as a fun process. You'll find that the person that you're interviewing will love giving you information. And so remember that as you go forward. 30% you talk, 70% they talk. Okay? Focus and listen to their needs and pain points. They're going to tell you a lot of things. If you hear something, drill down on it, right? It's all about them, not you. You want new insights, things that you don't know. Okay? That's what you're trying to figure out. Get stories on how they do their jobs, what their challenges are. Ask them to explain potentially. These are just ideas. To explain a typical day or a process, who they utilize today, how the buying decision's made, do they have a budget to buy what you're talking about, or do they have to go to a committee? Whatever makes sense. Now, if it does make sense, take pictures or videos. In some instances, many instances, that doesn't make sense. But I've also been in places where I'd go visit, let's say, a manufacturing facility that I don't know anything about, but if they allow me, I can take a couple pictures, and it really triggers a lot of different things in my mind as we go forward, okay? And remember, the goal is to learn, not to sell. We're not selling a product. We're trying to learn as much as we can. Don't worry, we will get to sales, but the whole idea is if we start making great connections, we have this nice dialogue, understand what their issues are. When we do come back after the, let's say towards the later part of the program, and we start moving into sales mode, then we call back the people that we actually had great conversations with, and then we start trying to figure out whether we're going to sell them or not, okay? And then at the end of every conversation, always open doors at the end. What does that mean? Ask them if there's anybody else that they should be talking to. Now that you had the questions, it's like, wow, this is amazing what you've told me. Who else should I be talking about to get more information about this? Okay, and that's another great way to get additional interviews. Okay, so example, I come in there. I'm walking in the door. This is where I'm meeting face to face. Hi, my name is Bill Adamowski. Thank you for meeting with me today. I really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, I'm part of that Drake Accelerator program that I talked about with you on the phone or an email. And I'm wanting to do something in the area of, let's say, automobile service, and was told by Paula that you were the most knowledgeable person in this area. Can I start by asking you to tell me more about your job and what you do, right? And then guess what? They start talking, right? And then they start talking. And then what I usually do is a list of different questions, very specific questions. And then once they tell me what they do, then it's sort of like, is it okay if I ask you a question? And then I jump into question one. And then when they start answering those questions, I might ask them things about it. So tell me more about that. Or how does that, wait. So you're saying this is what this thing is. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then we'll continue down that thread. And then we're down that thread, it's sort of getting slower and over. I'll go to my second question. How do you find blah, blah, blah? Okay? So that's at the interview itself, okay? And then you continue to ask, and then when you're done, thank you for your time once again today. You've been fantastic. I've learned so much from this conversation. I learned more about this industry from this conversation than I have, just going through the internet. Thank you so much. And before I leave, I have to ask you one question. Since you seem to know everything about this industry, who else could I talk to? Who else should I talk to so I can learn more about this? And then it's hard, once again, to resist that question. So they'll basically maybe give you 2 or 3 names, okay? You take those 2 or 3 names down. And then when you're setting up those interviews, you just sit there and say, so-and-so told me that you'd be a fantastic person to talk to about the automobile service industry, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what you want to do. Now, a best practice, immediately following the interview, what I do is I go to a coffee shop, okay? And because what I find, and start writing down the notes from that meeting. So I just don't do a dump. I mean, it doesn't even have to be pretty. I'm just writing down all the things that I remember from there, all the ideas that I had from there. And the reason I do that, at least this is for me, is that if I drive home, once I get home, I'm in home mode. And for some reason you get into home mode and you get distracted and then you don't have time to write it down till later, and you might forget a lot of the details. The same as if I went to the office. Once I walk into the office, I'm in office mode, right? There's other things that I need to get done, and I forget all the things that are happening in the interview. I mean, I'll get a lot of the details, but I won't get all the ones that, since they're fresh in my mind, stop somewhere. Typically, what I would do is a coffee shop. I don't sometimes even buy a coffee, but I write out my notes and update my customer scorecard, okay? So that's basically customer discovery in a nutshell. So here's some funny cartoons to maybe to actually give us some advice, okay? I've been told that I need to get candid, unbiased feedback for my startup idea. We love this idea, and we're so proud of you, son. Can you see how interviewing strangers is going to give you a lot more information instead of talking to, let's say, your parents in this case, or your friends, right? So make sure you're interviewing strangers and not friends, okay? Disarming polite behaviors. So watch how you phrase questions. Here's a funny example. Be completely honest and tell us what you think of this product that we've slaved over nights and weekends without sleep or salary because we think it's such a cool idea. What do you think that person's going to say? That person's obviously going to say, yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. And most likely they're going to look at their watch and say, you know what? I got to be leaving here in about 5 minutes. I really thank you for your time. Why? Because you are putting them in this disposition. You're putting some pressure on them. They don't want to piss you off, right? They don't want to make you mad. So they're going to say, yes, that sounds great. And then they're going to try to disengage from the conversation. So watch how you ask questions, okay? Another one. Here's one. Talk to relevant customers. This is a funny one. How was the customer interview? Great. I learned from my grandmother's bridge group that our dating app should have a rotary phone version, okay? So assuming that this person was trying to create a dating app for younger single folks, right? You're going to get information. Anyone you talk to, you will get information. But if you talk to the wrong customer, you may get information that's not appropriate for your customer segment. So make sure you're talking to the customer segments that are relevant to you and your business proposition. Okay? A couple tools that you can use. One is called the 5 Whys. Believe it was started at Toyota. But the whole concept here is when you ask a question, the first answer that typically is given back to you is a politically correct, pretty vanilla type answer. And a lot of times in interviews, we take that as like, oh, that sounds excellent. That's great. But what I encourage you to do is ask why. That's interesting. Why would you say that is? Or why is that important to you? Or why did you guys decide that? So ask why. When they tell you, then come back, they'll probably say, oh, it's because of blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? So blah, blah, blah is important. Why is blah, blah, blah important? So basically drill down. Some people call it peeling the onion. Ask why. Keep digging down 5 times. And what usually turns out is the first question that was asked will give you an answer. But on the 5th why, you'll really find out what the root cause of either that problem or that direction or that strategy. If you can figure that out and you can solve some of those, that is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful tool that you might use. It's called the 5 Whys. Another one is from our friends at Sandler Sales. This is their pain funnel. You can ask some of the questions that they have there in their pain funnel. Like, tell me more about that. Okay, so you have access to that, so you can go ahead and ask some of those questions. Okay, so on your assignment every week, basically keep a track, what I call a customer scorecard, right? Keep a track of who you spoke with. Okay, in this case, what their names were. You have their contact information somewhere. Category, where are they a potential customer? Are they an early adopter potentially? Some of those are they a potential partner, vendor, supplier, competitor? So keep track of what type of customer or what kind of person that you talk to, and then the interest level. So to me, if they're a potential customer and probably an early adopter, right, and their interest level is extremely, extremely high, like they're urgent, they need to have it now, what happens is after we build this, after weeks of talking to people, what you're going to do is basically try to find those, okay? And the ones that were very interested in your idea are going to be the first person that you're going to go sell to. In fact, those are the easiest ones to reach out to. I don't know if you've heard, but most of the times in business, your first customers are the hardest ones to sell because you have no track record, right? But through this customer discovery process, through this customer scorecard, you are going to have people that you had great conversations with and say, hey, remember me? This is Bill Adamowski calling again. I'd love to meet with you. One of the things that triggered something for us is that I think I have a solution for one of your problems. I think I could lay it out in about 20 minutes. Love to meet with you, lay out what you think is, and I think I can save you a bunch of money, or I can make you a bunch of money, or I can, whatever the gain or value proposition you're doing. So keep track of all the different conversations you have on the customer scorecard. So the assignment next week is pretty simple. Give me a one-pager of your business. So you're going to describe your business. We're still trying to get an understanding of who's who inside there. So we're trying to put a name with a business name with a face. Okay. So tell us what you do inside of your business. Just a one-page thing. Start and take a shot at the business model canvas. Okay. In your success journal, do the business model canvas. Okay. And then update the customer scorecard. Write down some insights that you got from having some of those conversations. Once again, you're just starting the customer discovery process, so that's fine. We just need to hear a couple of it. We just really want you to start talking to them, see what it feels like, and then you'll start getting into much more depth in the following weeks from now. Okay? So just start the customer discovery process, write down what your goals are for the following week, and then as you go through the week, write down what your accomplishments are. So in summary, for this video, customer discovery. Just want you to have fun in the process. This is an extremely, extremely powerful. This is how we validate whether there's truly a market opportunity or not, right? Enjoy the interviews. Learn. Take it all in, right? This is all about a learning process. And trust me, it will get easier and better in time. And the reason this is powerful is, remember, we talked about developing that superpower. Every time you come up with a brilliant idea, what you're going to do is, first of all, start making calls. Right? You're going to jump into that customer discovery process. And what you'll find out, and you'll get better at this, the calls and the data is going to go push you to say, wow, there truly is an opportunity, or it's going to push you the other way. Maybe that wasn't as great of an idea as I thought. But can you see? And then from there, we're going to start doing what we're going to do next week. We're going to start moving into different pieces of gathering different pieces of data to realize whether we can actually make money or if that business makes sense. Okay? So make sure you go ahead and complete week 1 in your journal, and I'll see you in the next video.